How's it going? Ryan here at Etrailer.com. Today on our 2019 Chevrolet Colorado, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Roadmaster Diode Wiring. This is going to allow you to transfer the lighting signals from the back of your motorhome to the back of the Colorado. That way you'll be safe and legal as you flat tow your Colorado down the road. What I really like about these compared to some of the others is the fact that once we get them installed, all we have to do to use them is plug them in, compared to some of the other ones where we have to drill into our taillight housing, or like the magnetic style, for example, where you have wires hanging, we have to set it up every time, and we have to worry about those magnets scratching up our truck's paint. Our diodes are actually going to separate our new wiring from our factory wiring, and that's especially useful in the case of a short or something like that. It's going to protect our factory wiring from any type of damage. And to fully complete our wiring setup, I used a Roadmaster 6-pole connector, as well as a bracket, a long no-drill bracket, and a coiled cable. Now, putting together a flat tow setup can be a little bit overwhelming, but keep in mind there's only 5 main components. You're going to have your base plate, your tow bar, your diode wiring, your braking system, and your safety cables. Now, getting your wiring installed can be a little time consuming, but as long as you take your time, you shouldn't have any problems. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and do that together now. To begin our installation, our fascia is removed, and that's because we did a base plate earlier and decided to do the wiring now with it still out of the way, because we'll have a lot more room. We're going to need to first route our wiring from the front of the vehicle, where we want our connection point to be, all the way to the back by the taillights. Well, here's the path that I took. I just ran it along our bumper beam, then up along the side of our radiator, that little pocket, and pushed it into the engine compartment. And this came along through here, and towards the back here, I actually dropped that wiring down next to our frame rail. So here's where our wiring drops down, and I dropped it on the outside of the frame rail. That way we're sure to avoid any hot or moving parts. I just dropped it down over our body mount. And then I just followed this factory wiring all the way down the side. Once I got to about this point, I ran the wire over our frame rail to the inside of our truck. So here's where our wire about comes on the inside of our frame rail. Once again, I just followed that factory wiring. I went up and over our metal brace, came out a little bit right past our spare tire, and I pushed it into the outside of our frame rail and secured it using a zip tie up here. And now, since our wiring is right by our taillights, what we can do is go up to the back of our truck and get started on those. Now, if we come back here to our taillight, we're going to need to remove it. So we're going to have 2 screws, one here and one here. We'll take those out using a T15 Torx bit. And once we have those screws out, we can kind of put some pressure towards us on our taillight to pop it out. And if you flip it around, you'll see all of our bulbs. We'll just take these out. That way we can set our taillight off to the side. So you'll just spin these about a 1/4 of a turn. We'll just pull out. Little clip there. Just rest those down there and set our light off to the side. Now, just a quick tech tip. These alignment pins here can get kind of hung up, and if they come out completely like this, it's no big deal. You're just going to have to put a little more tension on the taillight when you go to remove it. But once this one is disconnected and set off to the side, you can repeat that same process over on the passenger side. So back now underneath the truck to our wiring, what we're going to do is separate our 4 wires from each other, and then we can run them up into our tail light. So I'll just take a pair of snips and kind of carefully cut in between each wire. Then we're able to peel them apart from each other. Now I'm just going to peel these all the way back as far as I can. So with all of our wires separated, go ahead and just twist the ends of them together, and then we can feed it up into that opening that goes to our taillight pocket. Now with our wires ran up through the taillight pocket, we can test our factory taillight wiring to find the taillight or running light signal. Now I'm going to be tapping into the bulb closest to the top of the truck. So with the taillights on, we'll go ahead and use our test light to find the signal, and we'll start with this orange wire. So when we probe it, you can see that it's lighting up and making noise, so we've identified our taillight signal. So now I went ahead and turned on our left blinker, and we can find the turn signal wire. So go ahead and check this gray wire, and it's flashing with the turn signal, so we know that's it. Now we can focus on hooking up our diodes, so we'll go ahead and take our gray wire and our orange wire and cut those in half. Now we're going to strip each end back to expose the wiring underneath that insulation. I kind of like to twist the wires together to keep them nice and tight. Do that on both ends. What we're going to do is take the blue terminals off of our diodes and connect those to each end of our wire. So we'll go ahead and slide that over it, and we'll just crimp it down. Now we can plug our diodes in. I like to use some dielectric grease on the terminals just to help keep them a little more protected. I'll spread that on there. We're going to take the end that says out with the single terminal and plug that into the orange wire closest to the bulb. The other end of the orange wire will go on one of the end terminals. Now we're going to hook up our brown wire. So we'll kind of measure this out to length. Go ahead and cut that. And what we're going to do is take the other end of the brown wire that we just trimmed and strip that back as well. We're just going to connect those two together. With them two connected together, we can grab the yellow terminal, slide that over both of them, crimp it down, and put that onto the last remaining terminal on our diode. Now for the other one, we're going to take our diode, and again put some of that dielectric grease on it, plug the single out post into the gray wire closest to the bulb, take the other end of the gray wire, put it on one of the end terminals. We're going to take our yellow wire, cut it to length, put on one of the blue terminals. Once we have it crimped down, then that one will finally plug onto that last remaining terminal. Just like that. Now what we're going to do is take our diodes and secure them together. So on the back side, there will be some sticky tape. Just peel that backing paper off. Just line them up nice and straight. And push them together. Now we can reinstall our taillight. However, I do want to point out our green and white wire that we ran up earlier. This is actually going to get routed over to the passenger side of the vehicle. So we'll just go ahead and push those back down through the underside of our truck. So the bulbs will get installed the same way into the tail light. Just kind of push them in. Once they fall down, go ahead and spin them a quarter turn. Line everything back up and resecure our tail light. So now we can take our white wire and find a place to ground it. Now I'm going to choose right here. As long as it's a solid, clean piece of metal, you should be alright. So what I'll go ahead and do is kind of cut off that extra wire and strip back the insulation. Take the included ring terminal, get that crimped onto the wire. Now I'll take the included self-tapping tech screw and use that to secure it to our frame. Make sure it's nice and snug, we're good to go. I went ahead and routed our green and brown wire over to the passenger side tail light. That's the path that I took. Just use some zip ties along the way to keep it secured. So here's where our two wires ran up, just like the driver's side. And now at this point, we can start to connect our diodes. Same thing, we're going to be using this bulb closest to the top. And I went ahead and tested the wiring. We're going to be using the gray wire as well as the orange wire. Once all those are crimped on, go ahead and take one of our diodes. What we're going to do is take the single one that says out, put that into the orange wire closest to the bulb, and connect the other end of the orange wire to one of the terminals that say in. Now the brown wire is what we're going to connect to this diode. Grab our other diode, the single terminal that says out, plug into the gray wire close to the bulb. Again, the other end of the gray wire to one of the in terminals. And finally, we're able to get our green wire set up to plug in to the last remaining terminal. Let's go ahead and get it reinstalled and secured. Now, since our wiring doesn't come included with a plug or a bracket, I'm going to be using the Roadmaster plug, bracket, as well as a no-drill long bracket to mount everything to. And you can find all these items here at Etrailer. Now we can take our rubber grommet and run our wiring through it first. And if you're wondering what this red wire is, our customer is installing a charge line kit, so it makes sense to do this right now at the same time. We'll go ahead and take the bracket, put that over the wires as well. And now we can peel back the insulation to expose the wire underneath. So now we can take our plug and get our wires hooked up to it. Now, there is some lettering that lets us know which wire goes where. We'll have LT for left turn, and that'll be our yellow wire. RT for right turn, that'll be our green wire. We have TM, and that'll be for our tail lights, which will be the brown wire. GD is going to be ground for our white wire, and the one in the center here will be for our red charge line. So the way these work is these little set screws, we'll have to loosen them up a little bit. Then you'll take the corresponding wire, which in this case we're working on the LT, so we'll grab our yellow wire and push that wire all the way down into place. And you simply just tighten up that set screw. I'm going to repeat that same process for the remaining wires. What I like to do is take some dielectric grease and just really cover those terminals with it to help keep them protected from any corrosion. We can go ahead and slide our bracket over, as well as our rubber cap. What I like to do is just take a little bit of electrical tape and kind of tape around that just to help keep any moisture out of there. So I went ahead and secured our plug to our bracketry, get it nice and solid, Now we can go ahead and test it to make sure everything's working correctly. So I went ahead and plugged everything into our tester, and if you don't have one of these, you could always just use your motor home. And so now we can go ahead and turn it on and make sure our tail lights are working, our left turn, our right turn, and finally our brake lights. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Roadmaster Diode Wiring on our 2019 Chevrolet Colorado.